him, or maybe you need to touch it.
Yeah, right. first noise is going to be, yeah, could be that anyway. One doesn't know until one begins what's going to happen. Regardless, I mean, I've been warming up since. Yeah, or the music, or text, or all of a sudden the glass is on. Exactly. My prescription changes in the middle of a piece.
You know them all by heart by now.
He knows every part by heart.
40 seconds to be obnoxious.
Me too. Started last night. Boker Tov, good morning, Chag Sameach, Good Yontif, Gmar Chatima Tova. I'm going to put on my talit, and then I have a few things I need to share with you. As you know, we are heavily dependent currently on technology, and my favorite saying about technology is that it's wonderful until it isn't. Last evening we discovered that many Reform congregations, including some very close by where we are, lost their live stream during the course of their Kol Nidre service. We did not, as you know, and we are reasonably hopeful that that isn't going to happen today, but if it does, we will know that, and we will send out from here an email with directions to YouTube, and you can get the live stream directly that way. We will be bypassing our website if we have to do that. So far, so good. And it is to our advantage this morning that we are 3 hours ahead of our co-religionists on the other side of the continent, so things may be a little quieter for the morning service. What happens afterwards is anybody's guess, but we will try to be on top of that and let you know. So that's the first thing I want to share with you. And the other thing is just a little tidbit, and that is that we will go directly from this morning's service to the Yizkor service. And for the Yizkor service, you may very well want to have your Book of Remembrance copy at hand. You may not need it, that's up to you, but if you have one, you should try to have it at hand so that when we go into that service, if you need it, it's there. I think that sums up everything we're saying. So now we are going to begin our morning service on page 135 in the Mahzor, and I invite you to read with me. We thank you, living and eternal one, for morning light, for the breath within us, for strength and life renewed. Now it opens before us this Sabbath of Sabbaths, gift of spacious contemplation, mirror for the soul. May we see our lives reflected in this still, clear pool, a day apart, unhurried time, and undivided mind. Give us joy in this day that Israel shares. Give us presence and attention, clear vision, a listening heart. We wake to the morning, we open our eyes, we breathe your name. And we're going to continue on page 138 with the singing of Matovu.
Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Va'ani berov chasecha, Avo vetecha, Eshtakavecha kodecha, Ve'yiratecha, Adonai ahavti, Me'om betecha, U'mekom mishkan kivodecha, Mishkan kivodecha, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Va'ani eshtagaveh, Ve'yekra'a, Evrecha lifnei Adonai, Osi, Va'ani tefilati lecha, Adonai ed ratzon, Elohim berov chasdecha, Elohim berov chasdecha, Aneni be'emet yishecha, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael, Ma tovu, Ma tovu, Ohalecha Yaakov, Mishkenotecha Yisrael.
We continue on page 157, and this is a reading that should be significant for all of us. I can look at my body as an old friend who needs my help, or an enemy who frustrates me in every way with its frailty and inability to cope. Old friend, I shall try to be of comfort to you to the end. Page 158, Elohai.
Elohai neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai neshama, shenatata bi tehora, tehorahi. Elohai neshama, shenatata bi tehora.
And we read together, "Pure, my God, is the soul you have given me. You formed it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me. You keep it safe within me. Someday, when this soul returns to you, I will find a place in eternity. But as long as spirit breathes within me, I place before you my thanks. Eternal, my God and God of my ancestors, creator of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Baruch atah Adonai, asher biyado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol basar ish." We give you praise, Adonai. All life is in your hand, and in your care, the soul of every human being. We're going to continue on page 160 through page 162 with the morning blessings, and we're going to do these antiphonally. Is that correct? Still true, yeah?
Still true.
Still true, good. And I will start. Vicky has me very well trained. Mm-hmm. You are the source of blessing, Adonai. Your great power gave the mind discernment to distinguish light from darkness.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power opens eyes that cannot see.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power brings freedom to the captive.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power lifts up the fallen.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power spreads the land upon the waters.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power has made all I need.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power gives firmness to our steps.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power clothes the naked.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power gives strength to the weary.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power removes sleep from my eyes, slumber from my eyelids.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power made me in the image of God.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power endowed me with human freedom.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power has made me Yisrael.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power gives strength to Yisrael.
You are the source of blessings, Adonai. Your great power crowns Yisrael with glory. And we're going to continue now on page 176 with Chatzi Kaddish.
Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
V'yalmad yivrach yiruteh v'yamlik malchuteh. V'chayekon v'yomekon v'chayed kol bet Yisrael v'agala v'zman kariv v'yimru. Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lemei olmaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudisha brichu le'elah u'le'elah min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'ami hiran bi'olma v'yimeru.
Page 178, please rise for the formal opening of the service, the call to worship.
Baruch
Page 181. Like an unbroken current, energy streams from the source, bathing the planet in light, calling forth life, movement, mind unfolding from matter, the power to love. And we offer it back to you, our own creative energy, every dreaming, building, shaping patterns out of chaos, searching out light in the darkness. Creation never ceases, not for an instant. All life is aglow with your light. All things draw sustenance from the source. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMeorot. Page 182, and we will read to the bottom of page 184, so please join me. Love abundant, love unstinting, our God, you have enfolded us in love. Tender compassion beyond all bounds, your precious gift. Our fathers and mothers gave you their trust, and you gave them Torah, laws by which to live. For their sake, teach us as well. Grace us with your guidance. Loving Father, merciful Mother of us all, grant us clear understanding that we may listen, learn, and teach, preserve, practice, and fulfill with love every lesson of your Torah. May learning your Torah light up our eyes. May our hearts embrace your mitzvot. Unite us in love and reverence for you, that we may never feel ashamed of our deeds. We have trusted in your great and holy name. Now let us celebrate at last the joy of your salvation. Bring us in peace from the four corners of the earth. Lead us upright with pride to the land that is ours. For you are a God of miracles and wonders. From all the peoples of the earth you sought us out and brought us near to your great enduring truth. So with love we acknowledge and proclaim that you are one. Baruch atah Adonai, abocher ba'amo Yisrael be'ahava. We're going to continue with the Shema on page 186, and we will sing the Shema and Baruch Shem out loudly and proudly. That is what we do on Yom Kippur, and then you can be seated after that, and we will continue with the V'ahavta and Leman Tizkeru. Please rise for the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, B'chol levavcha, u'b'chol nafshecha, u'b'chol me'odecha, ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, asher anochi mitzavecha, hayom al vavecha, ve'shinantam levanecha, ve'dibarta bam, ve'shivtecha beveitecha, uvelechtecha b'derech, uveshrochvecha uvekumecha, ukeshartam le'ot hayadecha, lehayu letotafot bein einecha, uchetabtam amezuzot beitecha, uvisharecha, leman tizkeru, va'asitem et kol mitzvotai, item kedoshim lelohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem, me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lachem le'elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem.
We continue now on page 195, and Let's read together. And they shall know that I, Adonai, am their God, who brought them out of the land of Egypt, that I might abide among them. I, Adonai, their God. You took us out of the darkness so that your light might dwell among us. You showed us your power to bring down the powerful, uplift the enslaved, transform the social order. You showed us your strength so that we might remember our own. We carry the Exodus vision wherever we go, lest we forget our sense of liberation, lest we lose the joy of breathing free, lest we grow indifferent and blind to others' pain. So long as we work to make you present, we walk the path of freedom. But if we forget to bring you into this world, then we return to the darkness. On page 196, Michamocha.
Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi chamocha nehedar b'kodesh, norat hilot osefele, shira chadasha shivchu geulim, l'shimcha asefat hayam. יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד.
Page 197. Who is like you among the silent? Mute and inscrutable, you witness our pain. Once upon a time the sea was split, and Israel marveled at your outstretched arm. How many have cried out since then? How many have sunk beneath the waves? Centuries of innocent blood, lives lost to hunger, war, to cruelty or indifference, and those who died with your name on their lips. And still they perish in distant lands, and still they languish on our chilly streets. Your creatures are drowning even now, so why should we sing? Ever silent, hiding out in history, you have your reasons, or so they say. You left us on our own, so let us give you leave. Withdraw into yourself, withhold your saving power, and we will live on memories of joy, and stubborn and stiff-necked we'll cling to hope, and gather strength to fight the pharaohs when we must, and hold fast to freedom and celebrate in song, and vow that we will never be among the silent. Page 196, Tzur Yisrael, watch for that word kuma, because it is going to take us directly into the Amidah.
Yisrael, Kuma b'Yezrat Yisrael, go aleinu, Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai.
Baruch hu Shemo.
Ga Yisrael. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagit hilatecha. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagit hilatecha. Adonai open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Adonai, sifatai tiftach, ufi agite hilatecha. Adonai, sifatai tiftach, ufi agite hilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah. Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor, V'Hanora, El Elyon. Gomer chasadim tovim, v'konei hakol, v'zocher, chaste avot v'imahot, u'mevig ula livnei v'neihem, למען שמו באהבה. זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וכותבנו בספר החיים. למענך אלוהים חיים, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים בבורא עולים ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך מהמיד ומחיה ומצליח ישועה. מי כמוך אף הרחמים זוכה יצוריו, לחיים ברחמים ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
We continue now on page 208. Our sovereign God of pardon and forgiveness, let these words of sanctity ascend to you.
Kedusha
Let us proclaim the power of this day, a day whose holiness awakens deepest awe and inspires highest praise for your dominion. For your throne is a throne of love, your reign is a reign of truth. In truth, you are judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal, you record and recount. You remember all that we have forgotten. And when you open the book of memories, it speaks for itself, for every human hand leaves its mark, an imprint like no other. And so a great shofar will cry, Tekiah. A still, small voice will be heard. Angels in a whirl of fear and trembling will say, behold the day of judgment, for they too are judged. In your eyes, even they are not blameless.
tzom kippur yechatemun. Berosh Hashanah yikatevun. Ubeyom tzom kippur yechatemun.
An empty page, an open book, a day of ultimate questions. Will I still be here next year at this time, with the ones I love beside me? What is in store for my family, and what will become of my friends? Who will have reason to celebrate? Who will contend with grief?
Rosh Hashanah yikatevun. Ubeyom tzom kippur yechatemun. Berosh Hashanah yikatevun. Ubeyom tzom kippur yechatemun.
New love, new babies, marriages deepening or breaking apart, prosperity, struggle, reversals of fortune, illness and health await us. Who will be missing when we gather next? Who will stand apart? Who will be estranged? And who will have joined us, enriching our community? On the edge of the unknown we tremble. What lies ahead for us all?
Rosh Hashanah yikatevun. Ubeyom tzom kippur yechatemun. Berosh Hashanah yikatevun. Ubeyom tzom kippur yechatemun.
An empty page, an open book. Nothing is written and nothing is sealed. Flesh and blood, frail creatures, our lives are fleeting and subject to chance. Yet this we possess, the strength to persist, to prevail, to comfort one another in the dark. Prayer, right action, a turning toward the good, these give us hope and help us bear the pain of life.
O teshuvah, o tefillah, o tzedakah, ma'avirin et ra'ah ha'gezerah.
Page 215. When we walk through a valley of darkness but find courage to live in the shadow of pain, we transcend the harshness of the decree. When we speak about fear with honesty and share what is hardest to say, we transcend the harshness of the decree. When day becomes night but we let ourselves hope, we transcend the harshness of the decree. When we feel far from caring and friendship but let go of pride to ask for help, we transcend the harshness of the decree. When in grief we are crushed by the absence of love but open ourselves to your presence, we transcend the harshness of the decree. We're going to continue now on page 218 with the Kedusha. Please rise.
לקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ, כבוד.
Ma'adirenu Adonai, Adonenu, Ma'adir Shimcha b'chol ha'aretz. Baruch Kevod Adonai, Mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu hu Malkeinu, hu Moshienu vehu Yashmienu, Berachamav le'enei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohai Zion, Ledor vador. Hallelujah. Ledor vador nagid godlecha, Ulenetzach nitzachim Kedushacha nakdish V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed. Ki hamelech gadol v'kadosh atah. Kadosh atah v'nora shemecha v'yein Eloah mibalodecha. Kakatuv, vayikba Adonai tziva'ot b'mishpat, v'ha'el hakadosh nikdash b'tzedaka. Baruch ata Adonai, hamelech hakadosh.
We're going to continue on page 238 with Ritzeh. Shifok ruchacha aleinu, v'techezen einenu, v'shuvecha l'tzion berachamim. Baruch ata Adonai, hamachazir shekinato l'tzion. Hamachazir shekinato l'tzion. We continue on page 245. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev taught, the hands of the Kohanim were a language in themselves, hands held out with the palms facing up, indicating the desire to receive, hands held up with palms facing down, indicating the desire to give. So when the Kohanim lifted up their hands to bless, they did not wish to pray for themselves, but only to bestow God's bounty on the people. Holy One, we strive to be a nation of priests, our lives consecrated to holy work. Help us to use our hands as instruments of divine service, conduits of your goodness. May blessings flow through us to our children, our friends, and all those whose lives we touch. That brings us to page 244 with the priestly benediction. And our part, of course, is to answer the cantor with the phrase, Ken yehi ratzon, may this be God's will. The priestly benediction, page 244, please rise.
Yevarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha.
Ken yehi ratzon.
Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yikuneka.
Ken yehi ratzon.
Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha
Ken yehi ratzon. Page 246. Let there be peace. Grant goodness, blessing, and grace, constancy, and compassion to us and all Israel, your people. Avinu, bless and unite all human beings in the light of your presence, for your light has shown us a holy path for living. Devotion to love, generosity, blessedness, mercy, life, and peace. In your goodness, bless your people Israel with peace at all times.
Sefer Chaim Piraka B'Shalom Ufarnasa Tova Nizaker V'Nikatev Lefanecha Anachnu V'Kol Amcha Beit Yisrael L'chaim tovim U'Shalom Baruch atah Adonai Oseh HaShalom.
Please take this opportunity for personal and private prayer. When I was a rabbinical student in the late 80s, I was gobsmacked, though I probably didn't know the word back then, gobsmacked when I realized how little time in our 5-year curriculum was dedicated to liturgy. There were 2 single-semester courses on it. So since then, I have made it my business to learn more and more about the history of our liturgy. And I have come to understand that you can learn a lot about our history from our liturgy. For example, quite a bit of our liturgy is written in Aramaic, which is a sister language to Hebrew. Aramaic became the spoken language of the Jewish people from the time of the Babylonian exile, 586 BCE, till about 500 CE, so for a period of about 1,000 years. Daily life and commerce were conducted in Aramaic. So it is not surprising that some very important prayers, still in use today, were written in Aramaic, not in Hebrew, but in Aramaic. All forms of Kaddish are written in Aramaic. Kol Nidre is in Aramaic. A lot of the traditional text of the Haggadah is in Aramaic. And there are significant portions of the biblical book of Daniel written in Aramaic. But sometimes when you understand the prayers themselves, whether written in Hebrew or Aramaic, you can learn about the history of our people. An example of that is a prayer which was apparently composed in the 12th century. I'm referring to Av HaRachamim, which is sung regularly before the Torah is removed from the Ark, something we look forward to doing again on the other side of these isolation times. The prayer says, "Merciful Father, favor Zion with your goodness, rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, for in you alone do we trust, sovereign, high and exalted, eternal God." It is apparently an explicit reference to the destruction of the outer walls of the city of Jerusalem during the First Crusade against the Muslim occupiers of that city, beginning in the year 1099. The author says that the Jews trust only in God, not temporal rulers, to protect Jerusalem and the people themselves. Neither Muslim nor Christian rulers had shown themselves concerned with the well-being of the Jews as they careened toward bloody battles within those walls. No wonder the Jews expressed their unequivocal trust in God. Another prayer which reflects our history is central to the High Holy Days, Unetaneh Tokef Kedushat Hayom. Let us declare the power of this holy day. The text says clearly that God sits in judgment of us on this day and determines and records our fate for the coming year in the book of life. I know many people have trouble with this whole idea, rejecting the idea that God makes decisions, and I wrote about that in Ask the Rabbi in the September issue of our newsletter. But that's not the aspect of the prayer that I'm interested in today. I am instead focusing on the section that says, "On Rosh Hashanah it is written, and on Yom Kippur it is sealed, who will live and who will die." There follows a list of the ways that people will die: by fire or by water, by sword or by beast, by hunger or thirst, by earthquake or plague, by strangling or by stoning. And as I have been thinking about it, it occurs to me that these deaths are evocative of other times in our history. Death by fire suggests the destruction of the temple in the year 70 by the Romans. They knocked down what they could and burnt the rest. Death by water is reminiscent of the escape from Egypt through the parted waters of the Sea of Reeds, which subsequently drowned the pursuing Egyptians. Death by warfare recalls many events recorded in the Bible. Death by wild beasts reminds us of the story that the shepherd boy David rescued his flock from lions and bears, which was not the guaranteed result of such encounters. Hunger is a phenomenon that occurred with great frequency in antiquity, which the Bible records as famines. And the story of Hagar's escape from Sarah into the wilderness where there is no water, and she is there prepared to watch her son die of thirst. That story tells us that it too was a reality in those days. The text speaks about earthquakes, which are a well-established feature of Israel since it sits on the Syrian-African fault line and has experienced major quakes every 80 to 100 years for millennia now. Death by plague needs no explanation. But it is interesting to note that in a book published in 2010, our friend Joel Hoffman suggests that a better word for this instance might be pandemic. Death by strangling must have been more common in times before guns were readily available. And death by stoning is a common divinely mandated punishment in the Hebrew Bible. Most of these ways of dying are still happening today, though some with much less frequency than in the past, much less frequency than in times past. And that reminded me of an attempt in the late 90s and early 2000s to create a more contemporary version of this list of ways of death. I used that material for a couple of years as part of this section of the High Holy Days liturgy. I am paraphrasing here, but you will know what is being alluded to. Who by bus bomb and who by gunshot? Who at a pizza place and who at a Passover Seder? Who by suicide bomber and who by sniper? Who as a target and who by accident? This list was created at a time when Israelis were being attacked by Palestinian terrorists who infiltrated the country and made everyday activity a terrifying experience. Each week, there was a new list of victims published. Israelis carried 2 cell phones, one for work and friends, and one for immediate family only, so that in the event of a bombing, they could quickly establish the safety of their loved ones. But after a few years, these killings ended, in large part because Israel built a barrier, in some places a wall and in others a fence, which kept the terrorists out. So I stopped using this addendum to our liturgy. It was relevant and meaningful for only a brief time, but it underscored for me the need to update references in liturgy so that our prayers are relevant and meaningful. The Canadian poet and songwriter Leonard Cohen, who was a knowledgeable though not practicing Jew, wrote his own version of this list, which includes references to suicide, murder, drug use, abuses of power, the perils of greed and isolation, long debilitating illnesses, and sudden unexpected deaths. The melody he wrote is haunting and has been skillfully woven into the traditional text and melody of Unetaneh Tokef by various arrangers, including the one we used here as part of our dry run live stream. But the version of this prayer, which stopped me cold when I first read it recently, has a different slant on the traditional text, and it speaks very powerfully to the time we are living in. No, not the plague of the coronavirus. This is a different plague. Let me read a few excerpts for you. Who shall die while jogging? Who shall die while lawfully carrying a gun? Who shall die while begging for breath? Who shall die while shopping at Walmart? Who shall die while stopped for a traffic violation? Who shall die while on the shoulder of the road with car problems? Who shall die while holding a cell phone? Who shall die while running away? Who shall die by the effects of supremacy, greed, and apathy? This is an Unetaneh Tokef for Black Lives, written by Imani Romney Rosa Chapman, and it appears in the summer issue of Lilith magazine. The author is both Black and Jewish, and in combining these two aspects of her reality, she asks us to apply our heritage to the issues of social justice that keep Blacks in this country awake at night, just as the terrorist threat kept Israelis up in the late 90s. Please note, I am not assigning blame for the deaths to which this poem alludes. The poet surely does, but I am not doing that. I am merely pointing out that in our own time, Unetaneh Tokef can be read through a dark lens which illuminates the parallels between the scary ways that our ancestors encountered death in the course of ordinary life and the ways that others do now. Leonard Cohen did much the same thing with his version of the liturgy, but his song makes no connection between the various kinds of death he lists. This poet clearly makes a connection between the victims and the circumstances of their lives. The challenge of this version of our liturgy is to open our minds and our hearts to others. It would be easy to create a parallel list of the ways in which Jews died during the Holocaust, but that's no stretch. Instead, this version of Who by Fire asks us to tap our empathy, our compassion, and our anger and direct them towards social justice. A prayer which doesn't do something like that is just words on paper. A prayer that motivates action is an instrument of the divine, and a prayer that motivates action on behalf of others is tzedakah, righteousness at the highest level. Remember that tzedakah does not mean charity, it means doing the right thing. And the conclusion of Unetaneh Tokef says, Uteshuva, utefila, utzedakah, ma'avirin et roa hagezerah. Repentance, prayer, and acts of righteousness can soften the harshness of the decree. Repentance is the hallmark of this season, and prayer is built into these holy days. But acts of righteousness are and must be an ongoing obligation. Such actions signal how we respond to the times we live in. Poverty, imprisonment, and despair are the backdrop against which these deaths are occurring. We as Jews, must repent for our part in causing or not relieving these conditions. We must pray for the strength and ability to face this honestly, and we must act with righteousness to avert history's harsh judgment of us. Unetaneh Tokef Kedushat Hayom. Let us declare the power of this holy day, not just for our own personal fate, but also for the fate of others and for the fate of humanity. And let us be instruments of the divine in working for social justice. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will. We continue now on page 252 with Avinu Malkeinu. And we're going to read page 252 and 253 antiphonally, and then come back to 252. Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, hear our voice.
Avinu Malkeinu, we have strayed and sinned before you.
Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and our families.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the onslaught of sickness, violence, and hunger.
Avinu Malkeinu, halt the reign of those who cause pain and terror.
Avinu Malkeinu, enter our names in the book of lives well lived.
Avinu Malkeinu, renew for us a year of goodness.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our hands overflow with your blessings.
Avinu Malkeinu, let our eyes behold the dawn of redemption.
Avinu Malkeinu, we pray, do not turn us away from you with nothing.
Avinu Malkeinu, welcome our prayer with love, accept and embrace it.
Avinu Malkeinu, act toward us as befits your name.
Avinu Malkeinu, act for your sake, if not for ours.
Avinu Malkeinu, you alone are our sovereign.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the gates of heaven be open to our prayer.
Avinu Malkeinu, hear our voice, treat us with tender compassion.
Avinu Malkeinu, almighty and merciful, answer us with grace, for our deeds are wanting. Save us through acts of justice.
Avinu Malkeinu, Shema Koleinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Kadvanu lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, malkeinu kale kol tsar umastin me'aleinu avinu malkeinu kodvenu besefer chaim tovim avinu malkeinu Kadesh Aleinu Shana Tova Avinu Malkeinu Shema Koleinu Shema Koleinu Shema
Well, if this were a year in which everybody was assembled in the sanctuary, we would be proceeding to the Torah service. But that's not where we are this year, is it? So instead, I'm going to read the Torah reading for this morning and have a few things to say about it. And we will also include at that time an opportunity for a mishaberach, so that we can all pray for the people who are near and dear to us and in our thoughts. So the Torah reading for this morning is on page 266 in the Chumash, and if you are following on screen, you will see that the text begins with chapter 30, verse 1. This is from the book of Deuteronomy. And it is a reading that we just did in the normal sequence of things just a few weeks ago. And this is what it says. When all these things happen to you, the blessing and the curse that I have set before you, and you take them to heart among the nations to which Adonai your God has sent you away, and you return to Adonai your God, listening with all your heart and soul to God's voice, to everything I command you this day, you and your children, then Adonai your God will bring you back from captivity and take you back in love. Adonai your God will return to gather you from all the nations where you were scattered. Should you be banished beyond the horizon, even from there, Adonai your God will gather you up and take you back. And Adonai your God will bring you to the land of your ancestors, making it yours and giving you goodness and numbers greater than theirs. Then Adonai your God will open your heart and the hearts of your children to love Adonai your God with all your heart and with all your being, for the sake of your life. Adonai your God will afflict your enemies and those who pursue you with hate. But you will return, heeding the voice of Adonai, obedient to all the mitzvot I command you this day. And Adonai your God will bestow abundance through the work of your hand and the fruit of your womb, through the fruit of your livestock and the fruit of your land. Once again, Adonai will rejoice in your well-being as in your ancestors before you. Because you will heed the voice of Adonai your God, keeping the mitzvot and the laws inscribed in this book of the Torah, and return with all your heart and with all your being to Adonai your God. For this mitzvah, which I command you this day, is neither beyond you nor far away. It is not in heaven, causing you to say, who will go up to heaven on our behalf? Get it for us, and let us hear it, that we may do it. And it is not across the sea, causing you to say, who will cross the sea on our behalf? Get it for us and let us hear it, that we may do it. No, this is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart, that you can surely do it. Behold, this day I place before you life and well-being, death and hardship. In that I command you this day to love Adonai and walk in the ways of your God, to observe the mitzvot, laws, and judgments, so that you may live and flourish, blessed by Adonai your God in the land that is about to be yours. But if you turn away, refusing to listen, and go astray, bowing down to other gods and serving them, I tell you now, you will perish. Yes, you will perish. You will not last long in the land you are crossing the Jordan to possess. This day I call heaven and earth to witness regarding you. Life and death I have set before you, blessing and curse. Choose life, so that you and your children may live, by loving, obeying, and staying close to Adonai your God. For God gives you life and length of days to dwell upon the land that Adonai swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So that's the text. What's it all about? Well, as you can probably deduce from the context, the Israelites are perched on the east bank of the Jordan River, and they are about to cross the Jordan to take possession of the land that has been promised to them. It is worth noting that the land is not unoccupied. There are Canaanites in the land, that is to say, many different tribes occupying different parts of the land, and the Israelites are going to have to go in there and conquer it, and yet they are being charged here to follow God's teaching carefully. And so Moses is giving them their last instructions, if you will. Actually, he goes on at some length, giving 3 very long speeches, which make up the gist of the book of Deuteronomy. And here he is saying that if terrible things happen to you, and they will if you disobey God, but you turn back to God with all your heart and all your being, and follow God's teachings, then God will bring you back from wherever it is you have been scattered to. And I think this is a really interesting little section of this reading, because it is the one that was chosen by the Reform liturgists for the Torah reading for Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day. So listen to what I'm going to read to you. This is the same text I just read, but if you hear it with that filter, Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel Independence Day, after all that had taken place prior to the establishment of the state of Israel. Think about it this way. Then Adonai your God will bring you back from captivity and take you back in love. Adonai your God will return to gather you from all the nations where you were scattered. Should you be banished beyond the horizon, even from there, Adonai your God will gather you up and take you back. And Adonai your God will bring you to the land of your ancestors, making it yours and giving you goodness and numbers greater than theirs. It's got a particularly wonderful resonance when you think about it from that perspective. The other thing that's interesting in there is that in the Hebrew it says, Im yihiyeh nidachacha b'ktzei hashamayim, misham yikabetzcha Adonai Elohecha. From there Adonai will gather you up. And I hope you will listen carefully, because in there is the word kibbutz, yikabetzcha. God will gather you up. So I like that particularly. And then it goes on to say that if you follow God's teachings, you will prosper, which is nice news. And then it says, this commandment which I command you this day is not too hard for you. And that's an important point. This is something that you can do. And to make that point, the writer says, it is not beyond, it's not far away, and it's not in the heavens. That you should say, who's going to go up there and get it for us and teach it to us? Not there. And it's not across the sea. Who do we have to send over there to bring it to us and teach it to us? That's what this text says it is not. No, it's right here. It's in your mouth and in your heart to do it. And there is a wonderful story about this in the Talmud. I've told this story many times, so if you have heard me tell it before, please be advised, I'm now going to tell it again. The story in the Talmud is of two rabbis who are arguing, as rabbis are wont to do, or certainly were in those days, about the kashrut of an oven. Who cares about the kashrut of an oven? They did. And so they argued back and forth furiously. And Rabbi Aleph said, I'm right. And Rabbi Beth said, no, I'm right. And Rabbi Aleph said, to prove that I'm right, I call upon that tree over there to uproot itself and stand on its head with its leaves on the ground and its roots in the air. And that's what the tree did. And Rabbi Beth stepped forward and said, no, I'm right, and I call upon that tree to reroot itself properly in the ground, and so it did. Then Rabbi Aleph said, no, I'm right, and to prove that I'm right, I call upon that stream to reverse itself and flow backwards. And the stream did. And Rabbi Beth said, no, I'm right, and I now call upon that stream to reverse itself and flow in the right direction, and of course it did. And Rabbi Aleph said, I'm right, and to prove it, I call upon the walls of the building to collapse inward, and the walls of the building began to move inward, and Rabbi Beth said, I call upon the walls to stop, and they did. And then Rabbi Aleph, thinking he had the sure way to end this whole thing, he had the right answer. He said, I call upon a voice from heaven to say that I'm right. And a voice from heaven said, he's right. And Rabbi Beth laughed. And he quoted our text, and he said, it is not in the heaven. We don't wait for revelation anymore. God, you gave us the Torah, and it's up to us to figure it out, and we no longer wait for a proclamation from heaven to tell us what we're supposed to do. And you will not be surprised to discover that the law on the subject of that particular oven goes by Rabbi Beth. This is an important thing because what the rabbis did with this was to say that we have been given the text and we have to interpret it. And upon that idea, which is a quote from the Torah after all, upon that idea is all the history of Jewish interpretation and commentary on Torah and the establishment of a long, long literature of laws and practices. So this is a relatively important and seemingly innocuous text. And it says, no, this is very near to you, in your mouth, in your heart, that you can surely do it. Behold, this day I place before you life and well-being, death and hardship, in that I command you this day to love Adonai and walk in the ways of your God. And the command to us is to recognize that we are given a choice. And it's not that we're given a choice once a year. On Yom Kippur, we don't make New Year's resolutions, and all the way through the High Holy Days, we don't make New Year's resolutions. And we are chided by this particular text to remember that we have to make these resolutions ongoing, minute by minute, all day, every day, all year, all the time, because there are always choices to be made. And we always have to renew our commitment to observe the mitzvot, the laws, and the judgments, so you may live and flourish, blessed by Adonai your God. We have to make constant decisions. It's not a once only, but we must always be making these decisions. Now, the interesting thing to me at this point in the reading is that it does not tell us exactly how to go about this. It tells us what the big picture is, but it doesn't tell us how to go about this. And for that, you will have to come back this afternoon for the Torah reading, because this afternoon's Torah reading actually does spell it out. What we will read this afternoon is the opening section of the Holiness Code in the book of Leviticus. And it does, in fact, spell out how to achieve holiness. And I think you will be, if you have not read it before, or if you haven't thought about it in a long time, I think you will be encouraged, and you will find comfort in the text we read this afternoon and how it sets out how we are supposed to live. So in the morning we get the big picture, and in the afternoon we get the details. I think that's a good advertisement for returning this afternoon. Isn't there a song about returning? Is there something like that?
And we return to it all the time.
Should I deduce from this, Cantor Groper, that you're weary of returning?
Not at all.
Oh, no, silly me. So we are going to now turn to the Mishaberach. The text for the Mishaberach is on page 272. And we are not going to be reading names, but what I'm going to ask you to do as you listen and as perhaps you are looking at the text on the page, I'm going to ask you to think of the people for whom you are praying for health and well-being, wherever they are, however they are connected to you, and throw in, while you're at it, a prayer for our planet and the demise of the coronavirus.
Rifa'enu Adonai v'nei Rafeh, Hoshienu v'ni v'asheah, El karov lechol korov, ach karov lireav Yishor. We pray for healing of the body. We pray for healing of the soul, for strength of flesh and mind and spirit. We pray to once again behold El Narifana. Oh, please heal us now. Refuat ha-nefesh, urefuat ha-guf, refuat shelema. Heal us now. Heal us now.
This being Yom Kippur, we continue on page 292 with confessions. We stand in humility, conscious of our failings. Shema kolenu, Adonai, hear our call. True sacrifice to God is a penitent spirit, your treasure a crushed and repentant heart. For you are close to the brokenhearted, and you give strength to a suffering soul. You are the healer of shattered hearts. You are the one who binds up their wounds. For thus says the high and exalted one who lives forever, whose name is holy. I dwell in a high and holy place, but also with the downcast and lowly, to bring new life to despondent souls, to restore and revive repentant hearts. Return now, Israel, to Adonai your God, for you have fallen because of your sin. Take words with you and return to God. Ask the Eternal, forgive what is wrong, accept what is good. We stand in humility, conscious of our failings. We set before you the wrongs we have done. We trust in your compassion, for you know who we are. Shema kolenu, Adonai, hear our call. Page 294.
Go
page 295. Even rocks crack, I tell you, and not on account of age. For years they lie on their backs in the cold and the heat, so many years it almost creates the impression of calm. They don't move, so the cracks can hide. A kind of pride. Years pass over them as they wait. Whoever is going to shatter them hasn't come yet. And so the moss flourishes, the seaweed is cast about, the sea bursts out and slides back, and it seems the rocks are perfectly still, till a little seal comes to rub against them, comes and goes, and suddenly the stone has an open wound. I told you, when rocks crack, it happens by surprise, not to mention people.
Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, Imotenu, Tavo lefanecha, Tefilotenu, Ve'at titalam mitchinatenu, she'en anachnu azefonim ukeshe oref loma lefanecha. Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, ve'imotenu, tzadikim anachnu, ve'lo chatanu. Aval, aval, anachnu chatanu.
What follows next on page 296 is the the Hebrew alphabetical confession of sin. It's some people take that to heart by pounding gently on their hearts as we read this. Others take it to heart by listening very carefully. Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu,
Barnu Dofi,
Di Barnu Dofi, Evinu, Vehirshanu, Zadnu, Chamasnu, Tafalnu Sheker, Yatsnura, Kizavnu, Latsnu, Satsnu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Avinu,
Avinu,
Pashanu,
Pashanu,
Sararnu,
Sararnu,
Kishinu Oref,
Kishinu Orefai. Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Tainu, Titanu, And we're going to continue on page 299. I invite you to read with me. For the sin we committed against you through evading and avoiding because we could not face the truth. For our flight into hypocrisy and deception because we did not dare to speak it. For the facts we dissembled and all we glossed over, for the excuses we made. For feeding our bodies and starving our souls. For interfering with the souls of others and neglecting their needs. For shifting our responsibilities. For reproaches and recriminations. For our foolishness, our folly, and false standards, for seeing these things only in others, never in ourselves, for our complacency, which blinds us, and our self-righteousness, which lessens us, for calculating kindness and measuring out pity, for charity that is cold and prayers without feeling, for withholding our love, for the appeals that we ignored and the people whom we refused, for the affection which died and our lives that became bitter, for the visions which faded, the ideals we neglected, and the opportunities we lost, for the fear of change and renewal and our unbelief, for saying prayers aloud but refusing to listen, for being our own worst enemy. And we're going to continue now on page 308 and 309 with silent confessions. Please take this opportunity to read them and don't feel rushed. And we continue now on page 310.
Ki anu amecha v'ata Eloheinu anu vanecha v'ata avinu anu avadecha v'ata Adonenu anu kihalecha v'ata chelkeinu anu nachalatecha v'ata goraleinu anu tzonecha v'ata roenu anu charmecha v'ata notreinu anu fe'ulatecha v'ata yosreinu anu rayatecha v'ata dodeinu anu segulatecha v'ata kiroveinu anu amecha v'ata malkeinu anu ma'amirecha v'ata ma'amireinu.
I said last evening that one of the things I like about this particular machzor is that it acknowledges that we have done some good things, even though we have not been perfect. And on page 313, we have more of that thinking. Let's read this responsively. Let us affirm the good we have done. Let us acknowledge our acts of healing and repair. For the good we have done by acting with self-restraint and self-control. For the good we have done through acts of generosity and compassion. For the good we have done by offering children our love and support. For the good we have done by honoring our parents with care and respect. For the good we have done through acts of friendship and hospitality. For the good we have done through acts of forgiveness and reconciliation. For the good we have done by keeping promises and honoring commitments. For the good we have done through the work of our hands and by serving others. For the good we have done by caring for the earth and sustaining its creatures. For the good we have done by housing the homeless, feeding the hungry, and welcoming the stranger. For the good we have done by acting with integrity and honesty. For the good we have done through thoughtful and encouraging words. For the good we have done by caring for our health and that of our loved ones. For the good we have done by strengthening our Jewish community. For the good we have done through acts of civic engagement and tikkun olam. All these have brought light and healing into the world. May these acts inspire us to renew our efforts in the year to come. Page 319. In humble linen garments, the priests once stood at the altar. So we stand now in humility to lift up our offering to you. It is written in the Torah, each morning the Kohen shall take up the ashes left from the night's offerings and remove them from the altar. Thus begins the service of a new day. And our sages teach, clear away the debris of the past, begin anew. Complacency and despair are the enemies of hope. Each day summons us to start again. The fire on the altar must never die out. Tend it with care. Keep the sacred flame alive. So also should the spirit be sustained and preserved. This day we nourish ourselves with Torah and prayer, and tomorrow return to the world. Our energies replenished, our commitment renewed. Tomorrow we go forth to serve the Most High. In small ways, in all ways, let us align ourselves with the good, our minds and hearts and hands devoted to tikkun. In humility, we stand here this day, hoping to lift up our lives and persevere through life's trials. Let us gain strength from one another. Let us gain strength from the tradition we share. That concludes the morning service, and we are going to go directly into the Yizkor service. So there will just be a moment of realignment on the bima, and we will continue. I encourage you to have your book of remembrance at hand if you're going to need it. All yours.
We begin our Yizkor service on page 540 as Cantor Groper sings Eli, Eli. Our service continues on page 541. This is the hour of memory, and this is our house of comfort. Wounded by loss, we retreat from life. Our synagogue gathers us in. Into this place we begin stories and prayers, unanswered questions, tears that need to be shed, lives recollected and carried within us, moments of courage and laughter and pain. This day embraces them all. This place embraces us all. Now the heart opens in sorrow, for we are time's subjects, and all that we love we must lose. So let us hold fast to the love that remains and cherish the light of the sun. Today, all of us walk in the mourner's path. Together, may we find strength. And we continue on page 544 as Cantor Groper sings Shaviti Adonai.
Shaviti Adonai, Lenegit Amid, Ki mimini balemot, Lahem samach libi, Vayagel kivodi, Af besari, Yizkor lavetach,
We continue on page 549. The death of a loved one is the most profound of all sorrows. The grief that comes with such a loss is intense and multifaceted, affecting our emotions, our bodies, and our lives. Grief is preoccupying and depleting. Emotionally, grief is a mixture of raw feelings, such as sorrow, anguish, anger, regret, longing, fear, and deprivation. Grief may be experienced physically as exhaustion, emptiness, tension, sleeplessness, or loss of appetite. Grief invades our daily lives in many sudden gaps and changes, like that empty place at the dinner table, or the sudden loss of affection and companionship, as well as in many new apprehensions, adjustments, and uncertainties. The loss of a loved one throws every aspect of our lives out of balance. The closer we were to the person who died, the more havoc the loss creates. Love does not die quickly. Hence, to grieve is also to celebrate the depth of the union. Tears are then the jewels of remembrance, sad but glistening with the beauty of the past. So grief and its bitterness marks the end, but it is also praise for the one who is gone. At this time, you may want to be ready to open your book of remembrance. We dedicate this service to the memory of those members, too many of our members, this congregation who died during this past year. Gerald Goldschlager, Herbert Cashvan, Elaine Levin, Lillian Solon, Robert Solon, Nelson Grimm, David Brown, Ram Mayuhas, Michelle Patterson, and Ina Stull. And at this time, you may open your book of remembrance and read the individual prayers for your loved ones, which can be found on pages 6 to 8. Or if you don't have a book with you, there is a prayer on the screen. And we spend this time in our personal prayer.
There have been innumerable tributes to the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I have felt the need to add my own thoughts as part of our Yizkor service on this Yom Kippur. The only other time I have felt this need was the year that Elie Wiesel died. What do these two people have in common? Both were towering exemplars of Jewish values. Both brought those values into the secular world, holding themselves and everyone else to the high standards these represented, clearly aware of their own individual place in both Jewish and world history, but more impressed with the task they took on than their status or public acclaim. Wiesel bore quiet but insistent witness to the horrors of the Holocaust for the purpose of exposing the evil behind it and the common responsibility of all people to prevent such things from happening again. Ginsburg worked quietly and persistently to expose certain systemic biases that belied the intent of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, making America less than it claims to be. Justice Ginsburg has been lauded in these past 10 days for being an ardent feminist, a zealous environmentalist, a highly effective attorney, and a brilliant jurist. She has been remembered with admiration and respect, both for the cases she litigated all the way to the Supreme Court, where she won 5 out of 6, and for the opinions she wrote both for the majority and minority of the Supreme Court. She has been remembered with affection and awe by those who worked for her and those who worked with her. But I want to speak today to Justice Ginsburg's identity as a Jew. In a webinar I attended the other day about Ginsburg, a couple of the speakers made references to the piece of art proudly displayed in her chambers at the Supreme Court, which says in Hebrew, "Tzedek, tzedek tirdof," justice, justice you shall pursue, a quotation from Deuteronomy 16, verse 20. One of the speakers mentioned that Justice Ginsburg saw her work on feminist issues, on environmental issues, and on healthcare issues as a matter of tikkun olam, repairing the world. That speaker analyzed Ginsburg's strategy in repairing the world. She did not attempt, for example, to fight cases for women's rights by demanding a pervasive corrective to the inequalities embedded in our patriarchal and paternalistic society. Instead, she litigated very specific issues, exposing the iniquities of laws which contradicted the idea of equality. Gradually, she built a collection of decisions that amounted to the corrective she thought necessary, but also thought too much to ask for all at once. This strategy enabled the male justices to come to her side of the issue through their own thinking, guided by Ginsburg's eloquent and rational arguments. As a justice of the Supreme Court, Ginsburg understood that she would not always be on the winning side of a decision handed down by the court. So she used the tool of dissent, of issuing a minority opinion, not just to put forward her own thinking, but as a device to challenge future litigators, because she knew that a recorded dissent would be useful when these issues would be addressed again in the future. Her dissents are widely regarded as some of her best thinking and writing. I don't know whether Justice Ginsburg was aware of how deeply Jewish that approach was. The Mishnah, the first code of Jewish law, dated to around 200 CE, is considered the first legal code to ensconce both the majority and the minority opinion, with the majority determining law and practice. Our sages taught that a majority is not the same as truth. It is just a snapshot of the moment when the decision was taken. In fact, they taught that a unanimous decision in a capital case was invalid because it reflected no consideration of contrary opinions. Such a decision was considered hollow and blind. So Justice Ginsburg, whether she knew of this Mishnaic teaching or not, was in line with Jewish thinking when she fashioned succinct and elegant dissents to the majority, and her opinions have indeed been used in subsequent cases to move the court further toward her goals. I learned from the webinar that for the first 3 years of her tenure on the Supreme Court, Justice Ginsburg worked on Yom Kippur. But then she decided that she would not do so anymore, and that led to the court's decision not to sit at all on Yom Kippur. I learned that the Ginsburg family belonged to a temple and their children attended its school. Though she saw herself as a cultural, not a religious Jew, she was always aware of her responsibility to other Jews as a role model and as a bearer of our banner. I think everyone knows that RBG was a committed gym rat. She exercised rigorously and regularly. Not many people in their upper 80s are as fit as she was. But everyone knew that she could not go on forever, though her track record hinted otherwise. When she was asked why she stayed on the court, she answered that she loved the job. And she described her job as the pursuit of a just and compassionate world. Apparently, she was surprised to learn that she had become something of a cult figure and a meme in wide usage in social media. These were at odds with her quiet, studious demeanor, her self-perception based on lots of experience as an outsider, and her sense of herself, often mentioned of being a link in the long chain of those who pursue justice, a link in a long chain of those who pursue justice. I think she would be equally surprised to see the outpouring of grief that has been expressed since her death, not by those who knew her, but by those who did not, and whose mourning is genuine, widespread, and deep. That RBG died just as the Jewish New Year was arriving is profoundly sad. It is also very sad that her death has become an element in the current political climate. But our tradition teaches that someone who dies on Rosh Hashanah is a tzaddik, or in the case of a woman, a tzadeket, a righteous person. And that is certainly how Justice Ginsburg will be remembered. It is why she is so grieved. Our tradition also teaches that the world is sustained by the presence at all times of 36 righteous people. In Hebrew, the number 36 is a combination of the two letters Lamed and Vav. The 36 righteous people are called Lamed Vavniks. When one dies, another emerges. The time is right for the emergence of a new Lamed Vavnik, and we need her now.
We continue our service on page 578 with a personal reflection. How do my feelings of grief differ for each person I have lost? What is my personal prayer for each one? What would I like each of them to know about me now? Blessed is the life of every soul, pure and bright, the breath of God within us. We pray, help us know the infinite wisdom that gives life and takes it away. Forgive us for anger, bitterness, and selfishness. Teach us the language of healing. We continue on page 593 as Cantor Groper chants the 23rd Psalm.
A song of David. Adonai roi lo exal. Bin odesha yarbitzani. Alme menu kolchino kalani. Nafshi shoveh Yancheni v'ma'aglei tzedek lema'an לאמור. גם כי אלך בגצל מוות, לא ירא רע כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענתך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי. תשענת בשמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
On page 594, with God as my shepherd, I shall not want. The Eternal makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside the still waters, restores my soul, guides me in straight paths for the sake of God's name. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Eternal forever. And we continue on page 598. Cantor group who will chant El Malei Rachamim, please rise.
Amen.
You may be seated. And we continue on page 602. We miss them at celebrations when there's an empty seat at the table. We miss them when the community gathers and there's an empty place beside us. We miss them today and every day with every year that passes as our life goes on without them. Their faces, their voices, the feel of our arms around them, these are with us forever. For so it is written, love is strong as death. The love that we gave, the love we received, these endure amid the pain of loss. We continue now on page 605. All who mourn the loss of loved ones, and at this hour remember the sweet companionship and the cherished hopes that have passed away with them, give ear to the word of comfort spoken in the name of God. Only the body has died and returned to the dust. The spirit lives in the shelter of God's love and mercy. Our loved ones live on as well in the remembrance of those to whom they were precious. Their deeds of loving kindness, the true and beautiful words they spoke, are treasured as inspiration for deeds by which the living honor the dead. And when we ask in our grief, from where will our help come? Then in the strength of faith, let us answer with the psalmist, our help will come from God. God will not forsake us or leave us in our grief. Upon the Holy One we cast our burden, and God will grant us strength to live out the days apportioned to us. All life comes from God. All souls are in God's keeping. Come then, all who share in this community of sympathy and support, let us rise and hallow the name of God. And we conclude the service with the Mourner's Kaddish on page 606. And if it is your custom to rise at this time, please do so. Yitkadal, V'yitkadash, Shema Rabbah, V'yalma Divarach Hirutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, B'chayechon Uvyamechon Uvchaye Dechal Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvisman Koriv, V'yamru Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mavorach, Le'alam Almei Almaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ah, V'yitraman, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadah, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei de Kedusha, B'rechu. Le'ela, U'leila, Mikol, Birchata, V'shirata, Tushbechata, V'nechemata, Da'amiram B'alma, V'yimru, Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'yimru, Amen. Osei Shalom B'mramav, Hu Yasei Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel, V'yimru, Amen.
May the memory of good people bless our days.
That concludes our Yizkor service for today. There will be a break now. We will reconvene if you are so inclined. We invite you to reconvene at 2 p.m. for a healing service, and that will be done via Zoom. The link to that was sent out yesterday, so check your email and please join us, please join Delise for the healing service at 2 p.m. At 4:30 this afternoon, again by Zoom, I'll be conducting a discussion of the subject of repentance. And I invite you to join me and others, and we will have a conversation about this topic, which is relevant to our day today. And the concluding service of the day will begin at 5:35 this afternoon. That is intended to give us time to turn off Zoom and get back in here for the live stream. So there are many things coming yet for today, and we hope that you will join us again. Good morning. No, I take that back. Good afternoon, yes. And to you, sir.